Thinking about flipping a house and wondering how long it will take from start to finish. Flipping a house might look fast on the TV in 30 minutes, but the timeline in real life is very different. Knowing the true timeline helps you plan your financing, your renovation schedule, and how fast you'll see your profits. And in this video, we're going to break down the average timeline to flip a house and what can speed it up or slow it down. So let's start off with just the average time to flip a house. And when I'm talking about flipping a house, I want to define something real quick. This is to buy, do some type of renovations, and then resell. I'm not talking about just true wholesaling where you buy and assign a contract. So the national kind of average that we see and talking to other investors, seasoned investors out there, if you're talking to do call it more buy some kind of cosmetic renovations and then resell, nothing crazy structural or changing rooms around or additions, you're looking basically probably 6 months from purchase to resale is typical. If it's a lighter rehab and you got a good crew in place already and you kind of do a lot of flips in the other areas, it could be shorter, like 4 months. So that's going to include the acquisition. So, buying it where the clock starts, the rehab, the listing, and then the closing. Because if you think about it, you purchase the property, and I'm not even considering the timeline to find your first deal. So let's just say you buy a house immediately, then when you close on it, if the clock starts there, you essentially then start your renovations. And depending on the renovation work you do, let's factor in 2 months. And then let's just say it sits on the market for a month. You're at 3 months. And then for some close, it could take a buyer 60 days to close if it's an FHA type of loan. So now you're at 5 months. So that's kind of where the 4 to 6 on a typical light rehab is we're coming up with. Now, quick flips versus full rehabs, they're going to vary, right? Lighter cosmetic flips, rehab timeline could be 1 to 3 months, 30 to 90 days. Full gut renovations, changing things around, mechanicals, that could be 6 to 9 plus months. It really varies on the scope of your rehab. So the timeline breakdown to get more granular is, finding a property. So if you go pre-acquisition, that varies, right? Some people could, if you've been doing this for years, you could find a property pretty quickly in a few weeks. If you're new to this, like how are you going to find the property? Think about that. Deal structuring takes time, especially in a competitive market. Are you buying from a wholesaler? Are you doing all the direct marketing? Are you looking to buy on the MLS where there's more competition? Are you going to go through local or online REO and tax and sheriff sale auctions? So you got to understand like first how to find the property, and that could take a few weeks to a few months depending on how much time and effort you put into the deal sourcing. Then once you get like a property under contract, you probably have to close, depending on where you're buying from, within, call it, 4 weeks. And you're going to have to, during that time period, do you want to have your contractor walk through to get an understanding? Simultaneously, you're going to have a title company attorney do title searching, and then you got all the closing process and paperwork. And if you need some kind of lending, are you buying it with cash or a hard money lender or an asset-based lender? So those are some of the things to consider from a closing perspective. Next, if you're doing major changes to the property, what permitting is needed? It's beyond cosmetic. There, you got to know the local township and rules on different permits that you might have to pull before you could start work. You want to do it the right way. Then once you have all those things in process, you have to own the property, you can start the renovation. And that's going to depend on the scope. If you're doing paint, flooring, appliances, maybe touch up some of the vanities and the baths, you're talking what, a few weeks, 3 to 5, 6 weeks max. Um, and then the other thing is, are you doing major system repairs like roofs, electrical, plumbing, full kitchens, redesigning rooms? That's going to take months plus. So that's it's going to blow up your renovation scope. And then, certain errors in our flipping life, we've ran into supply chain issues in a few years ago in the 2020, 21, 22 areas. Windows in certain areas might have been taken 6 to 8 weeks. So how do you handle that? Do you say, hey, they're already paid for, we have a contractor lined up, so and they could implement those windows in after they close the buyer, or do you just wait and extend the close? So these are things to consider on certain materials taking longer than expected, especially if you're doing like custom work, such as kitchen cabinets, windows, and doors. That can really add to the timeline. Once renovation's done, you're basically you're staging and you're listening to buyers on the MLS. And, depending on each market, what the inventory levels are, you could, be gone over a weekend of an open house and have it under contract, or it could sit for 2 to 3 months in a kind of like a stale buyer's market. So be prepared for that. And then once it's on the market, there's closing. And depending on who you're selling to, like a cash buyer versus conventional loan versus an FHA loan, closings can take from anywhere on average 3 to 6 weeks. It really depends on the buyer's financing and the type of lender they're working with, or its cash deal is going to be a lot quicker. So the next thing that we'll talk about is what factors can affect the timeline. And scope of repairs is the bigger the project, the longer it's going to take, right? Contractor availability, you got to manage. Bad contractors can destroy your timeline, so vet out your team. Don't just get one quote. Get referrals, get 3 to 4 quotes to see what people's track records are, scope of work, professionalism. Do they show up on time when they're supposed to? Did they send in the proposal when they're supposed to? So consider all those things. Depending on the scale of your work, are there going to be permitting delays at the local government? And that red tape can slow things down. Will there be any financing delays on when you acquire the property? Is your hard money lender or private lenders fast to get the funding in place for this deal? And then there's seasonality of home selling once you have it listed on the market. Homes listed in the spring and summer traditionally often sell faster than in the winter. And then, certain market conditions can change pretty quickly. If an employer pulls out of town, it could quickly go from a hot seller's market to a buyer's market overnight. We've seen that over time. So those are some risk and things to consider. Now, some tips to flip faster, have a plan before you close, line up your contractors, your materials, your lending. Choose easy to renovate properties is my recommendation. Me and Paul, since we do this across the country, we do more cosmetic rehabs where the house might be 1990s dated, paint, flooring, appliances, some bathroom vanity upgrades is ideal for us. We try to avoid full guts, foundation issues, and other things like that. Avoid those surprises. And then you want to use, again, recommended, referred, reliable local contractors. You want to build a team that you could trust, and they're accountable for their timeline. And then on the sell side, you have a good agent, right? Do they know how to stage and market effectively? Or they propose great photos, smart pricing, just to get the property to sell faster for you. So to summarize, like on average, you could expect your flip to take 4 to 6 months, but again, it's going to depend on, how quickly you find a deal, your team, and your local market conditions on from a sellability. So don't rush it. A well-managed flip begins with better profits and fewer headaches. So if this helped you, this video, subscribe, like, and share with someone. And then if you have any questions about the timelines or anything that I discussed, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Me and Paul always happy to address those questions.